In this video, we're going to use Django to launch this very basic one-page personal profile website. This tutorial is aimed at anybody that's looking to keep things simple, Django, and render out, just set up a project and render out a template and figure out the basics. So we're not going to go into anything like databases or any of the other cool things that Django can do. We're just going to stick to the very simple. So if anybody follows this tutorial and wants personal help with this, go ahead and leave me a comment in the comment section and I'll do my best to reach out to you. We can get on a Skype session or any other way, and I can personally walk you through getting this process set up. And also, just to see more videos, if you want to see more videos like this, please subscribe to my channel and give me feedback in the comment section. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. So if you're getting started with Django, I'm assuming you already have Python installed and have access to the pip command. So before we do anything, we first need to make sure Django is installed on our computer. So let's go ahead and run pip install Django. And I already have it, so it's going to tell me I have all the files, but if you don't, let those run through, and this will download all the commands you need for Django and all the required packages that come with it. So I'm in the folder that I want to host my Django project in. So at this point, after we run pip install Django, I can now create our first project file by running Django-admin start project. And we need to give our project a name. So I'll just call mine my website like this. And once that runs, you'll notice this folder appear, and this is going to give us the boilerplate Django files here. So let's go ahead and change our directory to be in that file. And at this point, we can actually turn on our Django server and see what we have so far. So to turn on our server, the command is python manage.py run server. And this will tell us that our project is now live on port 8000 right here. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my browser and show you what that gave us. So I have port 8000 here saved in this tab, so go ahead and put that into your browser. And if you're seeing this, it means that you've successfully installed the Django files, and we've connected our server, launched it, and you're good up until this point. So as complicated as Django seems, it's actually very easy to get to this starting point here. So the next step is to actually customize our files and create some templating and URL routing system so we can render the pages we want and not the default. So I'm going to go ahead and open the files up in Sublime Text, and I'll show you the structure and what we need to do here in a second. So here's our project, and the first thing we need to do, I just want to show you this right here actually. This is kind of like the main folder we have in the Django setup, settings.py. This is where our base configuration happens here. So the first thing we're going to do is, once we have that, is to create something called an app. Now, our database, our templates will be stored in these folders called an app. So what we need to do is run a command that'll set up that filing system for us, and we can just build off of those and integrate them. So the command is python manage.py start app, and we'll just call our app, we can name it whatever we want, we'll just call it base. And you'll see the folder appear right here. So it's kind of like our start project command where it gave us a bunch of files, and this is where we write a lot of our code here. This is where we put the templates in. So before we actually add something into our app, let's connect it in settings.py so our project knows to be aware of this app. So in settings.py, in this installed apps list right here, let's go ahead and make sure it knows. So the name of our app is base, and we're just making sure that our project knows it's there. So that's all we had to do. It's now connected. So in our new app, we need to first add some templates, and the way Django tells us to add templates is it needs us to create a folder called templates, and this is just its naming convention. And once we have this folder, Django actually tells us to create another folder inside templates, and it needs to be the name of whatever we call our app, so we'll call that base. So it seems a little redundant, but basically the file structure goes base templates, base, and inside this base folder is where we add our first template. So let's go ahead and create a home.html page, and I'll just add some text here so we can see it. And let's just say hello world. Okay, so we have our template set up, and now we need to create a function that will render this template, and Django does this in views. So views are basically functions that take in a request, and I'll call this function home. They take in a request and they return anything from just a HTTP response that can be whatever we want it to be, or a template. So okay, so return render, and this render method is from this import right here, and the render also takes in the request, and we need to give it a template to render out. So first we need to specify the app that this template is coming from. So the app is called base right here, and we need to go / home.html. And this function will now return that template for us. But before we do that, we need to do a few things with our URL routing system. So in this app, we need to create another file called urls.py. And in this urls.py file right here, we need to first run some imports. So from Django.urls, import path. And I'll explain this in a second. And we also want to import all these functions here. So we're going to have lots of views down the road, so we just want to import them all. So we're just going to say from this folder, import views. And that's because we're in this URLs file and we want this views file to be in there. So that's done with that dot notation there. And we need the URL paths are just going to be a list. So URL patterns. And I believe it has to be named this. I've never named it anything else just based off of what I've seen. But this is where we use path. Now a path is just simply a URL route that tells us what URL, so when a URL is called, what view do we render? So we're gonna say when the base URL path is called, so when we just have our base page, go ahead and call views.home. So render this template right here, or render this function. Call this function, which will render the template. So go ahead and call that function. And that's not all. At this point, we need to actually go to our base project files. There's actually two urls.py files here. So we need to configure this URLs file to take us here. So let me just explain this in a second. So there's a little bit more pre-built here. So the first thing I want to do is use this include method. And we have another path like this. So again, at the base URL, instead of taking us to a certain function, what we're going to do is say include all the URLs from the app that we specify. So at this point, our app is called base, so we say base.urls. So what it's saying is when we call this page right here, the default page, the home page, take us to this URLs file and let this file handle all that. And this file says, okay, well, here's the URL route, render that home page. So I hope that makes sense. And at this point, we should be able to run our server and actually render that page. So Python manage.py run server. Let's turn that back on and make sure everything's set up. So it looks like we're all good. And let's see if we get any errors. Okay, there we go. So our template's rendered. Perfect. That's exactly what we needed. And now that we have our templates, let's actually add some CSS and images into the template. So I'm gonna open that up right now. And instead of just adding CSS like this, where we can just do style and go ahead and start writing code, we wanna get ready for this project to scale. So the Django method of doing this is to create one folder that will hold all of our images and images, CSS, JavaScript files, and so on. So at this point, let's go ahead and create a folder in our root directory here, and we'll call this static files. And in static files, let's go ahead and create a folder for all of our CSS files and a folder for all of our images. Okay, so I'm actually going to copy and paste some images so we have them here. So give me a second to do that. So I'll just go into that static files folder, images, and I'll open up another folder and throw some in there. Okay, so I'm just going to copy and paste these folders, and basically I have some social links and a profile picture that I'm going to use on my page here. So now that I have those are in images. I want to create a CSS file here, so I'll just call this main.css. And just to see some styling, let's just go to that h3 tag that we created, and I want to set the color to red. And at this point, this page knows nothing about this CSS file. And so instead of just running a direct path to import this, we're actually going to do this a little bit more dynamically. So we need to finish up some configuration in our settings.py file to let it know about the new static files folder we created, and then I'll show you how to import that. So in the settings.py file, so in here we have our static URLs, which is the path to the folder that's going to hold our static files. Now I called it static files just to show you that the naming can be whatever we want it. We can call it static files 1. It doesn't matter, but we just need to let it know here. So instead of static, we'll call it static files. And one more thing here, I'm actually just going to type this out and I'll explain it in a second. We're going to tell, it's just going to be another path like this, but we're going to tell it exactly where to look for that folder. And this is just going to be a list right here, and do os.path.join. And I'll show you where this variable was set earlier, but we're basically just letting it know to go out to this root file and look for this folder. And base directory is set up here. So it's actually referencing something, just not leave you in the dark there. Now that that's set up, we can actually import the static files dynamically here. So Django uses Jinja. You don't have to worry too much about the syntax or what that is, but basically you just call in load static, and we can actually use this variable now to reference it. So I'll go ahead and call that CSS file in here. And this is where things get dynamic. So instead of just finding that direct file path, we're actually going to use this syntax right here, and just 2 curly braces, and we're going to first call in static. So basically we're saying static folder is where we're going to start this, the static folder is where we're going to start this search. And let's just use 2 single quotes here. And at this point we can actually go /, and this is basically what I'm doing is going CSS. So go to this folder and main.css. So we're able to access this folder even though this template is way somewhere in here, and we're able to access it by loading in this static folder here. So it's pretty cool. You'll find it more, at this point it seems like a little too much work to figure out right away, but you'll find it very useful down the road when your files get really big. And now let's just throw in an image. So same thing, we'll just do a basic image tag. And we're going to do this by going static, and we need to do images / and my image is called, my profile picture is called Dennis Ivanov. And at this point, I shouldn't be able to load that. What I need to do is just let settings.py know about images now. So in settings.py, we're going to throw in this variable here, which is going to be called media URL. And we'll let it know that all our media files will be stored in the images folder. So once we have that, I believe we can see our image if we don't have any issues. Okay, there's a slide issue. Oh, that's our problem. I didn't do .jpeg. And that should do it now. And there we have it. So we have our static CSS, or we have CSS stored in our static files, our images, and we're now ready to use some, I'm going to use some Bootstrap right now. This is not a Bootstrap tutorial, so I'll go over that real quick, and I'll actually cover just a little bit, just so if you don't understand it, you don't know what's going on here, but I'm actually going to add some styling to this now and finish out the build. So let's go ahead and clean this up. So let's actually get some base HTML here, give myself a title, and I am going to throw in this style sheet in here now, and load static in here, and I'll add in our image in a second here. So at this point, let's just comment this out. And let's just use some, oh, actually, let's load in Bootstrap real quick. So we'll just grab the link here. So let's go to Bootstrap CDN and grab the files. And we just want CSS. So let's go ahead and copy that and throw that into our head tag here. And that now gives us Bootstrap, and let's extend this way. And I want I want 3 rows, I believe. Yeah, 3 rows. So I want 3 rows, and the top one will be 2 columns, and the next 2 rows will have 2 columns each, but in a different format. So just some Bootstrap right here. So row, let's create columns. So column, so it's a Bootstrap command, or the Bootstrap class is column dash, and I want that a medium size, and I want the first one to be 3 there, and I'll just show you what that does in a second. And we're going to use these things called Bootstrap cards, which basically create these little boxes and style them for us. So card body. So we'll just do that. And Bootstrap's divided into 12 sections. So I actually need this to be 9. So 3 plus line 9 is 12 right there. And I'm going to create another wrapper around this and call that container. This basically just centers everything. And let's close that out. Okay, let's just make sure we're on the right track here. Static. I think that has to be out here somewhere. Yeah, so that can't be in our head file. And looks like we have a small issue here. Okay, so I found the bug, and I need to call that class. And so we have that column that's 3 and the column that's 9 right there. So let's just go ahead and continue that structure. And these we'll just want to do 6 and 6. And we want 1 more row below. So this is the basic layout that I want, and I'll actually add some space in between these real fast. And just want some room between the top. And I know this isn't the best method, but it's not a HTML and CSS course here. So let's throw in one right here. And right here and at the bottom. And before we open that up, let's actually, there's actually a color I want our body to be, just so those cards stand out a little bit more. And I'm just going to paste it in. I want that to be a shade of light gray here. Okay, so that just gave us this light gray so we can see those cards a little bit better. And I'll go ahead and add a little bit more CSS and throw in the images, and we'll just finish this up really fast. And we'll just grab this image here. and I'll delete the rest of it. And we'll throw that into the first card here. So that'll be this right here. I'll throw that in there, and I'm going to add a line break underneath it. And I want to give myself a little introduction. So I'll just say, hi, I'm Dennis. And then in smaller text, I'll just give a little description. Actually, I'll just paste this in. I actually have it written out. Okay, so I want this to be a circular image, and I want to center this text. So I'm going to add some CSS that'll be universal. So I'll just actually paste in all the CSS that I want. So the first thing is I want to make sure that profile picture is it's a circle, and that's what this will take care of. So we're just going to say width is 150, height is 150, and border radius of 50, and center it. And then we're going to say all the text within profile wrapper will be centered. So we have to add these classes here. So at this point, I'm just going to give this an ID of profile pic. And I'll give this card right here, this div, the ID of profile wrapper. Okay, and that should clean that up a little bit. Perfect, that's exactly what we wanted. And I'll just continue adding in, descriptions. So in this card right here, I'll have a long description and some social links. So I'm going to paste that in, and just to summarize it, we just have a headline, line break, and a bunch of paragraph tags. And let's go ahead and add social links now. And those I'm going to add with, I'm just going to paste these in. I'm going to throw them into that same wrapper, give them some space so you can identify them. And they're just going to be this list right here, and they're going to be references to our images. So I believe I actually call that, yeah, this needs to be changed to image, and so on. And I'll need to style them really fast, so they need to be changed in size. So I'll just throw in some CSS for that too. So we'll remove all the padding, remove that lift style so you won't see that dot. And we're also gonna make those inline, and they'll float to the left, and we'll change the size of them. And there we go. And I just have a few more, a little bit more description to add, and that's gonna be it for us. Okay, so that gives us our page, and the last thing we want to do is fix, I want to add a little bit of color here, and I want to fix this right here where the card sizes don't align. So that's another thing we can actually fix with Bootstrap, and that can be done with this class right here. So I'll go ahead and just add this to all of the cards. So let's go to the very top and make sure they're all sized up. And that should set them all to be the same size now. Okay, so we got these on the bottom to be the same size, even though it doesn't fill out, and I just need to fix this top one here. Oh, I set that to the column. That's my problem right there. That needs to be given to the card. And there we go. And the last thing I want to do is I want to give these two cards right here just a different color just to identify them a little bit better. So border dash info. Info is a Bootstrap command. It's a color. And info here. Okay, there we go. So that does it for this tutorial. If you want help setting up your own app this way, let me know in the comments section. I'll try to reach out to you and we can get on some kind of webinar, Skype, or whatever we need, and I'll try to personally walk you through, make sure everything's set up in your application. And also, if you can, support my channel by subscribing and give me feedback in the comment section. Thank you guys for watching.